and marathons have in common? Well, if you're me and you fall in love with someone, you're probably gonna have to run 26.2 miles to get over them. If you had told me in high school that I'd be running marathons and getting dumped, I would have told you you're insane. I could never run more than 3 miles in high school, and I was a devoted girlfriend. I had mastered the role. But let me give you some context. Before 2017, I had not been single since late 2010. I'm not great at math, but I'm pretty sure that's a little over 6 years. So at the angsty age of 14, when most girls were experimenting with weird haircuts or like exploring hobbies and stuff, I was learning the art of being a girlfriend. Because I'm a naturally very passionate and affectionate person, loving somebody else was really easy. It was loving myself that was really hard. I decided that I would play the co-star in the movie that I started to star around somebody else. Not much changed when I got to BC, and I fell in love with a boy who I always thought would be the love of my life, and you can tell where this is going. We met through a Rupe, so BC, and we were best friends, and immediately our romantic relationship magnified to an extreme level of commitment. We did everything together, and we were madly in love. We shared the same friend group, we even took a class together. He was the cherry on top of my seemingly perfect BC experience. I met my best friends on the first day of school, which is crazy. They're right there. I was accepted to be an orientation leader. I don't know who let me do that. And I even started doing this thing where I started running for fun, which I never really understood why people did that. But I was actually starting to enjoy it. I seemed to be thriving. And then junior year came around, and we all hit speed bumps. There were new obstacles, and as I started to struggle with my mental health, found less passion for my extracurricular commitments, I started leaning on my boyfriend to give my days meaning and purpose. I really was losing touch with myself, and he was my sole source of joy at the time. And so I decided that I was just gonna try to keep it together, and that was not good enough. And one day, during finals week actually, at the end of junior fall, I was in O'Neill and I got dumped on the 3rd floor right by the check-in desk. He looked at me in the most loving way possible and said, "Steph, you need to learn how to love yourself before somebody else can." And I was destroyed. I was so shattered. I started to second guess if all of my personal growth at BC was real or imagined. And it was finals week, so I was unable to study, I was unable to sleep, I honestly was so dysfunctional, I don't even know how I got through that time. But I did something that I don't think a lot of people would do after a breakup. I signed up for the Paris Marathon, which was kind of crazy. While the chocolate and the breakup songs helped in the short term, I realized that maybe I didn't really know myself as well as I always thought I did. So I vowed to myself that I would spend my semester abroad in Spain learning how to love myself independently of another person. I just added a finish line at the end. So I set off a few weeks later to Spain. If you ever encounter any obstacle in your life, run off to Europe. It's like a fantastic place to bounce back. Just like flee, yeah, it's great. And so I spent, I don't know how I did it, but I was living with a host family and taking classes, and I somehow managed to train for this race. I would run through the streets of Europe and become overwhelmed with gratitude for the ability to explore new places. But all the while, I was overwhelmed with this feeling of unraveling a new, stronger Stephanie. And so, almost a year ago to this day, on April 9th, I set out to Paris completely alone. I had been training how to fly solo, and this was my test. On that day, I stood under the Arc de Triomphe. I don't speak it like a French, but I was so excited. And I set out to run my 26.2 miles. I strode forward, step by step, each stronger than the last. And when I crossed the finish line, hours later, I was consumed with emotion. And I started sobbing because the only thought that I had swirling through my head was, who the hell was that girl? Because that was not the girl that was getting dumped in O'Neill lobby just a few months before. That race turned out to be so much more than a marathon because it was a solitary adventure to self-love. In the city of love. And so this talk is not a story about how I became a runner, because I still would not consider myself a runner. It's also not a story about how I became a really cool single person, because I'm not that either. Instead, it's a story about how the long breathless runs and the long lonely nights turned out to be the biggest opportunity for personal growth and change. The truth is, I never knew how to cultivate happiness on my own because I never had to. I always had someone to pick me up when I was falling apart and to push me forward when I was falling behind. 6 years of my life flew by where I only knew myself as half of a whole person, and that person was not the happiest nor healthiest version of herself. Honestly, she barely knew herself. Reclaiming my independence has provided me with this profound self-love that has helped me overcome obstacles in this past year that I couldn't have imagined, like a recent diagnosis with PCOS and a chronic ankle injury that has prevented me from running long distance altogether. But I still feel like the happiest, healthiest, and most radiant version of myself that I've ever felt. So I'll ask you again, what do breakups and marathons have in common? Well, they're sure as hell gonna hurt, but they also have the ability to completely transform your relationship with yourself.